Hello and welcome back to Tik-Tokophobia with me, Alexia, and my co-host JJ. Hi, JJ.
Hi, great to be back again.
Yeah, we're back again. And now today we're going to be diving into the most likely root cause of tocophobia in, I would say, and this is just my personal opinion, but I think probably 80% of cases, the root cause is the thing that we're going to talk about today, which is your own birth, the trauma of your own birth. This is such a big conversation. I don't think we're going to get it all done today, actually, because there's so much I could speak on when it comes to our perinatal experiences. And by that, I mean our own experience in utero and our own experience of being born. But we're going to just talk about the being born bit today, because that's the bit that really touches on tocophobia and is actually really behind it. And when we start diving into this, I think this is going to become clearer as to why that is. So, and we were just talking before we came on, JJ, about the difference between us. Now, obviously, we both had tocophobia. And for both of us, the root was our own birth. But you know about your birth, whereas I've got no idea about my birth. So what was your birth? Let's start with you.
Well, of course, I don't remember it because
Obviously, no, no.
don't remember a thing about it. But my mother told me that I was born with the umbilical cord around my neck and I was a blue baby and that I was whisked away into an oxygen tent for 2 weeks. So can you imagine the terror that that baby, me, when I was born, felt coming down the birth canal, being strangled by the umbilical cord, and then being carted off out into the world, which is probably a bit scary for any baby, and then being stuck in some kind of isolation area. No, not lots of cuddles. No, not even being. I wasn't breastfed. None of that. So bottle fed. No cuddle. What a nightmare.
Yeah,
Now, obviously, I don't remember any of that, but it must have been absolutely terrifying.
yeah, all of it.
All of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So um, then, as we know, trauma embeds itself in your body. So that trauma has been embedded in every single cell of my body since that point,
yeah.
without me knowing it, because I don't remember it. And even when my mum told me, it was like, oh, okay, I get that. And then I'd make jokes about maybe that was my first attempt at self-sabotage, but
Mm,
um, yeah. And
yeah.
then, of course, fast forward some decades, and I found that I was pregnant. I had a pregnancy test done, and this absolute, um, uh, amazingly intense feeling of terror just absolutely shook my entire body when I saw that. No idea where it came from, no idea why at that point. And then some days later, I'd miscarried.
Mm,
What I now know is that that was a reliving of the terror that I probably felt
yeah,
when I was being born.
yeah.
But I had no idea. I had no idea where it came from until I started talking with you and we started talking about tocophobia and I put two and two together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, and when I was going through my healing journey, so when I had tocophobia and I was thinking, well, I've got to birth this baby and I really want to, the only way I can do this is having a C-section and being knocked out cold, unconscious, because I don't want to be present in any capacity for the arrival of this baby. Just pull it out and call me later when it's done. Now, of course, that's not possible, right? You have to kind of like show up and be there
You have
in
to do
some,
something. You have to take
yeah,
part.
in awareness, even in a C-section, you still have to be awake.
Mm.
And so I knew I needed to confront this, and I didn't have a lot of time because this is the end of my first trimester. So this is what led to me developing all of my work, but I developed a way to heal my tocophobia, which I did in my second trimester. So I'm on this healing journey. And one day, for some reason, I think to myself, I wonder if I've got trauma around my own birth. Now, my mum had died at that point, so I couldn't ask her anything about my birth. My dad, useless on that front. So I don't even know if he's in the room or anything. And even when I've asked him about it since, he's like, well, I don't know. So yeah, no information there at all. But I just set the intention to heal my birth, whatever that might be. And from all the work I've done in healing, I'm aware that you can do blind healing in that sense, you content-free healing, if you like,
Yeah.
where you do set that intention. So I did that. And for half an hour, I cried like I've never cried. Like it was this like primal crying. I was making sounds that I didn't know I could make. And they were coming from so deep within me that like it just felt like this thing had come over me and I was purging this deep kind of I don't know why this comes to me now, but the scene in the Terminator, the second Terminator, when he's sinking into the melted iron, and then you see all
Oh
these
yeah.
other characters that he's had over the throughout the film, and they're like, oh, right, they're all doing that, and it felt like there was these other life forms, these other parts of me that I didn't know about that were all just screaming and coming out. And it was just the most incredible experience I'd ever had. And for half an hour, as I was going through that healing process, I was crying. I was a mess. There were tissues, snot. It was awful. But by the end of it, I remember thinking, oh, wow. Well, it's like I'd just taken the most heaviest rucksack off my back, and suddenly I just felt so light. And again, like maybe like I just climbed Mount Everest. Yeah, I took the rucksack off at the top, saw the view, looked at the thing I've just walked up, and went, holy shit, my God, I just went up there. Amazing. I feel great, but knackered. Can I go to bed now? It was just that sense of having purged and let go of something so incredible. And I thought, well, I guess that answers that then. There'll be a trauma hiding in there. But amazingly, after that, I remember thinking with my tocophobia, I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, well, I can see the exit now. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I've got a few more little fears to clear, and then I'll be done. Whereas up until that point, I still felt engulfed by the shadow, the weight, the heaviness of the fear, and I couldn't see a way out. But the minute I healed the trauma, bump, I could see that exit. I could see relief. I could see that this could end and that it didn't need much more from me in order for it to end. And then I could just head to the finish line. And that's what I did. And I've seen that time and time again now with my clients that when we heal the birth trauma, boom, it all just collapses. It's like the thing that is holding it all up. Everything else is hanging off that. Once you get rid of that, it all just comes down. That is the root that's holding this thing up.
Yeah.
Um, and understanding that, looking in that direction is crucial because that's where, for many, not all, the solution lies in terms of healing their tocophobia.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you call it the apex anxiety disorder. It really is. And there are so many clues that could be picked up throughout a person's life, even if you don't know what your birth story is. That I think a lot of professionals really need to be made aware of. But we talk about those in other episodes of this podcast. But for me, when I felt that shockwave of terror when I saw the pregnancy test, I did not understand it because,
Mm.
I didn't put two and two together. Didn't put two and two together at all. Why would I? Why should, but I didn't understand where it had come from. And then what a lot of people, well, I probably haven't talked to a lot of people about this actually, but afterwards, after I'd got over the everything to do with the miscarriage, I just felt angry. I was angry as hell.
Mm.
I didn't know what I was angry about. I didn't know. But I had this huge upswell of anger about what had happened, but I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And, it took me a long time to get through that. And then, of course, you get to menopause. And although I, I'd never really felt comfortable with the idea of having children, when I got to menopause, there was a point where I suddenly realized, oh, this means I'll never, I, I'm, that's it. It's not going to happen now. It never
Mm.
will happen now.
Mm.
that realization that you've gone past that point of fertility. And again, didn't quite understand why that would be a thing, but somewhere in my psyche, there was still this element of that would be, that's something that I would probably want to go down the road of had I not had this tocophobia.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we look at birth and the trauma of birth, it makes so much sense actually when you consider the parallels with tocophobia. And so I'm just going to touch on some of those now because, there are some people listening that might be going, well, I'm not convinced. Sounds great. And yeah, you guys had that, but that's
Yeah, I
not
haven't got it.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mum said my birth was great. She had a great time. And I know that, I say that not flippantly, but like some women might
Yeah.
say, oh, yeah, the birth was fine. It was fine. We were in hospital and, oh, yeah, it was a bit difficult times, but it was all fine. Or, well, let's just be clear on what's going on here. That was the mother's experience of the birth, not the baby's experience of the birth. So just
Exactly.
because mum had a great time or whatever her experience was, doesn't have, there's just no connection there with what the baby was going through. Now, if mother had a difficult birth, then you can absolutely bet that baby did too. So yeah, if mother had a difficult or traumatic birth, yeah, baby's going to need support to help unravel that one and heal it. But if mum didn't, that doesn't mean that you didn't, because let's think about this journey. Let's kind of like, and I know that those that have tocophobia listen to this might start awakening things in you. And so if it is, then, maybe come back and listen to some of this later. But it's important for us to talk about this so that you can better understand it. But you think about the process of birth. At some point, the baby decides when they're going to be born. They trigger labor. They trigger the beginning of all of that. And so then the baby's now inching its way down the birth canal if it's not a C-section. And they might get stuck. They might feel the pressures of the contractions and feel that's too much. They're feeling trapped because maybe their arm's a little bit stuck or their knees got stuck. So the power of the contractions feels too much. They don't feel like they're in control because the contractions are forcing them down. They might not feel ready, especially if they were like induced. Well, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to be born. Oh, well, no, someone else has decided that today's the day. So this sense of not being ready, which a lot of women feel that, they feel like I'm not ready to have kids. Well, maybe this is coming from that, right? Maybe they were induced, maybe they were kind of pushed along in a way, or pulled out with a C-section on a certain day, but they weren't thinking about being born till a week later. This sense of control, because you're not in control as the baby, the contractions are, the woman's body's doing all of that work. The trappedness of it all and how tight it must feel inside the birth canal. I mean, all of these are themes of tocophobia. So when you start drawing the parallels, it's just so obvious that
Yeah.
this is where it's from. This is exactly this is where we've learned to hate not being in control. This is where we've learned to hate this feeling of being trapped. And for you, this cord wrapped around your neck and how you were suffocating yourself has just rippled out for you. And now that you've had that insight, it makes so much sense. You can see where it's all come from.
Yeah. Yeah. A life stifled by this deep seated anxiety. Yeah. Yeah. That has really basically killed off any creative endeavor at a certain point, right? So they started all full of promise, everything looks good, and then no, it doesn't happen, doesn't work out, falls apart, can't move forward with it. Suffocates everything.
And in fact, the way that we're born puts in, outside of tocophobia, the way that we're born, our experiences of being born show up in so many ways in our lives. So let's say, we talk about the C-section. There are some incredible specialists, prenatal psychologists, perinatal specialists that do incredible work around all of this. So, feel free to go and read around the subject. There's Dr. Thomas Verney, who I've interviewed on my Fear-Free Childbirth podcast. Dr. David Chamberlain's done great work. We've got Shirley Ward, who's done incredible work around this. We've got Anna Verwell also. So please go and seek out some of these experts if you want to find out more about this. But C-section babies often need to be pulled out of situations because they're not used to initiating, because they've never had to push themselves down the birth canal. Those that have forceps births, they push, 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 but then they don't finish the last 100 yards because they never needed to. They got pulled out. I see this in my business coaching all the time, where people are really good at, doing all the things, and then suddenly they disengage at the last minute, or they don't kind of finish. And then they realize, and I asked them, were you a forceps baby by any chance? They're like, how did you know? And I'm like, the pattern's there.
Yeah.
These patterns are imprinted during this time, this foundational time. So tocophobia or no tocophobia, that stuff's going on anyway. But when there's if that was traumatic for you, then it's showing up in a whole new way. But none of us can escape the impact of our own birth and how that shows up for us. Like nobody can, but it's even more accentuated in the context of tocophobia.
Yeah. And for anybody who's watching or listening to this and saying, well, that's all a bit extreme, isn't it? You can't say that, pulling somebody out with forceps is going to have that impact on their life. But or you can't say that because you were strangling yourself at birth, then everything else in your life is being suffocated and strangled. Well, but it's important to understand the relationship between your subconscious, which is forming at that time, and your body and whatever your experiences are. And that is a hugely impactful experience right at the beginning of life that is deeply embedded in your body. And if when you think about how the subconscious interacts with you and the way you show up in the world, it's pretty clear that these are the correlations. If you go back to birth, you'll see them. Forceps deliveries, people who felt the contractions were too tight and they were squeezing, they were being, all of that, it cannot but impact your life. I can't stress that too much. It is a fact. So because I just think a lot of people will be sitting thinking, but surely not.
No, I know. And I like to sit there and go, don't be so ridiculous, of course. Like, how can you dismiss it? Because we were all born. It's the most important transition we will ever have made. And what kind of gets me a little bit angry is when I think about the therapeutic and the psychology world, and where for them, you think about Jung and Freud, it all starts in childhood. Everyone talks about childhood wounds. Everyone talks about starting point for your mental health. Go to your childhood. Let's see what traumas you had in childhood. No. We need to go further back than that, guys. We need to go way further back. But even in the world of psychology, they're still debating, oh, well, not sure about this birth stuff. No, guys, come on. Like, this is, let's just everybody get with the program now. Birth is absolutely part of this mental health conversation. And we need to be going there. If people are having challenges and recurring patterns and sabotaging and anxiety and depression, and you are not looking at their birth and you're not looking at their gestational experience, you are doing a disservice to them. You're being negligent, because this absolutely is part of who we are. And how can you dismiss even that time in conception and gestation, 9 months when we're being made? How can we dismiss that as an experience and having an impact on who we are when we're being made? So for me, it's like the time is over now for people to be asking questions and go, well, I'm not sure about the birth experience. It's like, no, look at yourself in the mirror, give yourself a talking to, because this absolutely is part of who we are. And the sooner everybody gets with the program, the sooner we can start addressing this and healing people. Because right now, a lot of this stuff is being overlooked, and we've got a mental health crisis on our hands. We've got people with raging levels of anxiety. We've got a suicide problem among men. Like, maybe all these men have got tocophobia and they don't even know that they've got it, because it's embedded this pattern of depression and anxiety in them that nobody knows how to heal, because they're not even looking for it. Because they think it's a woman thing in the pregnancy space. This is why this conversation is so important, because mental health is a real problem right now. And everybody needs to get that birth is where it all starts. And that is my final position on the matter, JJ.
Well, I agree with you now. I might not have agreed with you before, but I do agree with you now. Because we're taught that, up until the age of 70 is when your life is, decided, when your patterns are embedded, and, all your experiences leading up to the age of 7. It's all set by the age of 7. Well, what if it's just set when you come when you're coming out and being born? What if that's when it's all set?
Yeah, I know.
And in my experience, in my trainings, nobody's ever talked about that. Nobody's talked about that in that way. And we do.
And that's really a problem. Like, that's a real problem that I think we're facing when you think about the level of training that you've had, the level of training that I've had in these kind of and I have not trained to the level that a lot of people that work in therapy and healing have, because I spent my first part of my career was in marketing. So I'm a business marketeer. And so I don't have a lot of training, but I have some training. And I've definitely been through the therapeutic process. I've done the Hoffman process, which was like all the versions of therapy. And actually, when I think about the Hoffman process, which was incredible, and I would absolutely recommend it because it was brilliant for me, I don't think we touched on birth as part of that, looking back. No. And now I'm like, we bloody should have done. Like, that should absolutely be part of that week. Like the birth experience, our own birth. And it's interesting, when I've been putting out content around tocophobia and around what we're doing, and I say, it's the root trauma is the birth. And everybody, I've had to correct everybody, because they're all thinking, oh, the woman giving birth. No.
Yes.
That's not the birth I'm on about. It's your birth.
And I had that very conversation with somebody only the other day. And she said, oh, yeah, well, I had a difficult... No. I'm not talking about you giving birth. I'm talking about your child, your baby coming out.
You being born. Yeah. You being born. How do we, when we talk about birth trauma, maybe we need to have a way of saying, no, we're not talking about birth as in the woman experiencing the trauma from giving birth, but our birth. How do we distinguish? We probably need to have a different term for that, so that people know what we're talking about.
I think that's absolutely
also part of the problem, because when I think about the way that tocophobia is defined, which that needs to be scratched and started again, but that's probably for another conversation.
Well, we can do that. We'll do that.
We can do that. Yeah. There's primary and secondary tocophobia, and primary, second, just do it quickly for those that are wondering what I'm on about. Primary tocophobia is for those that describe those that don't have any experience of giving birth. Right, this is the funny part. Okay, and then the secondary tocophobia is those that have got a traumatic birth experience, but actually they've both got traumatic birth experiences. One is from their own birth or another trauma, and others is from giving birth. So again, we're getting the muddied water here from not having a way of describing these two different types of trauma. Of birth trauma, they're getting it's all getting murky in that, and we need to kind of start peeling the little strands apart so that it's really clear what's going on and what we're talking about. And that's part of what we want to try and do here, is start this conversation so we can start talking about this and getting the right people involved, so that we can start changing the narrative around all of this and ultimately get the support to those who need it so they can find it.
That would be great, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be brilliant? Yeah, I just constantly think back of how my life would be so different had somebody been able to help me get over that phobia, which I didn't even know I had then.
I know. I wish I'd found out about it in my 20s. Like, I would have so liked to be a younger mum, but here I am as an older mum, and we deal with what we've been given, right? But my goodness, I wish I could have found about mine sooner. So that's why we're doing this, isn't it? So that the younger women can find out sooner and get on with sorting it out if that's what they want,
If that's what they want, exactly.
If that's what they want, absolutely. Well, I think we're going to wrap up for today, JJ. This has been another great conversation. I hope you've enjoyed listening, watching, and we'll be back next time for another chat on Tik-Tokophobia, all about tocophobia.
Absolutely. See you then.
Bye.